What's up, everybody? This is Crankdat, and I am here on the Nebula Music Podcast, and we are going to discuss some very interesting topics.
All right, what is up, everybody? Eddie Barco here once again. You guys know what it is. This is a show where we talk to some of the coolest musicians or anyone who's doing something cool in the music industry. We have them on the podcast to explore their brain just for a little bit with hopes that we can learn something new and just have some fun in the process. Today, I'm super excited because I have somebody who I'm a big fan of who's super talented and not in California, oddly enough. We have Mr. Christian Smith, a.k.a. Crankdat, on the show. How are you doing, man?
Good, sir. How are you?
I am excellent. Earlier today, or just a little bit earlier before this, we were talking about how my man here is in Ohio, but technically you're in this small town south of Ohio. What was the name of the town again?
Yeah, it's called Youngstown.
Youngstown.
It's southeast of Cleveland by like an hour or so. So usually I just tell people I'm from Cleveland, but technically that's not true at all. But it's the easiest to understand, right? So.
Yeah. How'd you like growing up in Ohio? I know you're technically from, I think you said Pittsburgh, right? But I feel like a lot of the people that I get the opportunity to talk to in general tend to sort of be from specific areas, whether it's the West Coast or like the East Coast,
Sure.
like New York or whatever. But Ohio, I don't get a lot of people from Ohio. So I'm just curious, what was that like for you? Super broad fucking question, but I don't know.
No, that's all right. What was it like? Well, honestly, I didn't know any different. I would assume typical in my personal experience. But yeah, I mean, the one thing that I kind of found out, especially getting into music at a, late teen age into early adult, there is not really any kind of a scene around here of any kind.
Yeah.
And that is extremely true for electronic music and even more true for pretty much everything. I mean, even like I can think of some big hip hop acts. It's like hip hop's the biggest genre. Rap and hip hop are the biggest genre in the world. And I think the biggest venue that we have in like my area to sort of accommodate that might be like 10,000 capacity.
Wow.
So, we're thinking like, you have like a Staples Center in Los Angeles, which is what, like 20 some thousand, right? So
Yeah. I think it's closer to like 25, I think, maybe.
Yeah,
but
so
around that
definitely
number.
north of there for sure. But yeah, I pretty much just learned that there's like no music scene really here. The one I will say this, country music blows it out of the water. But that's not saying much in my opinion. That's okay.
And that's not your cup of tea. You're not a huge country boy.
No, personally. I am definitely the anomaly compared to where I live. But yeah, I'm not really that big of a country guy.
Yeah, I guess what I'm curious about is how does that connect to EDM music? Just because, when it comes to me talking to certain people that are from smaller towns or from some of the more, I don't want to say random places because that's not the case as much anymore. But like you just described, Ohio isn't necessarily the hot spot where most of the acts go. I think it's more of like a second stop. If there's time, people will definitely go through Cleveland. But I guess I'm curious, how did you, being from this town where country is probably very, very big and also hip hop, navigated towards EDM, which is so interesting. And you make amazing music. So to me, it's like,
thank you.
Does not compute. I would never have guessed you were from Ohio. That's basically what I'm putting it as.
I 100% understand. And you're absolutely right that this area kind of is. I would label it exactly what you did. It's a second stop, right? It's like if you have a bus going from New York to Detroit, you're probably going to stop in Cleveland just because you might as well pick up some extra cash on the way. That's just like what the touring artists do, right? But nobody's going to be like, yo, let's go to Cleveland. That's where it's at. Kill the show, fill it all the way now. So for me, it was much less of a product of, living in Ohio and just more so kind of being a child of the internet, because that's, for me at least, that's where the entire scene was. I got into like Skrillex in particular. I got into Skrillex when he was releasing Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, which was 2011.
Yeah.
I want to say I was like 13 or 14 at the time. So even off of that, I wasn't old enough to really experience much of a music scene, in my area if there were one. So it had very, very little to do with that, and more so everything to do with just sort of, being on the internet, being a fan of music in general and just kind of experiencing what was like new and what was catching my ear at the time.
Yeah. Just a random sidetrack. Were you ever like a huge part of all the like 4chan, maybe early days of like the dark web? Did you ever venture into those areas in your internet escapades, or were you mostly just like into the music forums back in those days?
I never quite made it that deep. So no, to answer that question, no. Because I know that could definitely say a lot about somebody. I don't really remember that being part of what I did. So I would definitely say no. I was more so just like being 13. I was like on YouTube every day, like checking out music, trying to figure out, what kind of music was cool, what I liked, stuff like that. So much more surface level browsing.
Did you ever wish you got into all that deep stuff, or you're like, nah, I'm okay without it in my life?
I mean, like, as I grew up, I did. So like, I think it probably was for the better that, as a like 12 and 13-year-old boy, I did not. But yeah, that's okay.
So then you were listening to Skrillex, and a lot of these people at that time that really just changed the way things were. Skrillex, I know everybody brings that album up because it did change so much. Like literally, we were all listening to a certain type of music prior to that, and then that album came out, and everything went like on a 90-degree angle, went completely the other direction. Well, I'm curious, when you listened to that, were you instantly inspired, like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do? Or what I would imagine would happen, but I don't know for sure, you probably listened to a couple other people after that, and then eventually you came to the realization that you wanted to do that. But some people were very much like, oh shit, Skrillex is doing something so bizarre, I got to figure out what this is all about. So I'm wondering where do you fall into that?
Well, you were pretty accurate. I was certainly enamored with it the first time that I heard it, but it was different. So I like hip hop before, like rap and hip hop. Like that was all that I really cared about. Like growing up.
Like who'd you listen to hip hop wise?
What's that?
Who'd you listen to hip hop wise?
T-Pain, like pretty much exclusively.
Hell yeah.
T-Pain and others like, within that sort of territory at that time. I'm still just a major fan of like the mid 2000s hip hop, late 2000s hip hop. T-Pain, like Black Eyed Peas, Flo Rida I was really big on. Just like all those like mainstream guys way back in the day. So, hearing like something that was, like Skrillex, even as kind of I don't know. Looking back on it, it was definitely very approachable in retrospect. But at that time, it was very, very cutting edge and kind of, just like I'm failing to find words to describe it. But it was very different, very, very left of center, especially for me, liking hip hop. So yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head in that it wasn't necessarily that did it for me exclusively, where it was more so just like discovering like, holy shit, wait a minute. Like there's not just Skrillex, there's Deadmau5, there's Flux Pavilion. There's like all this culture going on here. And then I found out they made it with computers, and that was like, here we go. Let's get into this,
Yeah. What's fascinating is at the time I was in college when that album dropped. And I remember that it was a very fast, like it came out and then people talked about it and it immediately spread everywhere about, Skrillex and everything. And because I came up in the more traditional musician side of things, I say this in a lot of episodes, but I feel like their context is needed sometimes. So I repeat it. It's, I have this perspective from where what you would consider traditional musicians, people that grow up like learning music and how to read it and mastering their instrument and then eventually going off to either play for artists or orchestras or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And there was this interesting divide, that I noticed immediately when that happened. And there was a huge amount of people like you who were very much just enamored with, oh my God, this is just out of nowhere. And then there was an equal amount of people on the other side who were very much, like what you would imagine, like, oh, this is destroying music. How dare they do this?
Absolutely.
And a lot of those people still believe that to this day. But what's fascinating is I find that generally speaking, and I'm not a musicologist, so don't take my word for it, but at least in my observations, there are specific moments in music where things have just changed dramatically, more than average. I would say like the Beatles, Nirvana, There's a couple others in there, and then you have Skrillex, who's probably the closest one that has happened in the past like decade or two, where it really, really, really shifted what we consider is music. So I guess my question for you is, when you heard Skrillex and then you heard Dead Mouse and you heard a lot of those, granddaddies of what we have now,
Sure.
Were you immediately trying to emulate that sound, or were you just trying to figure out what this computer music was? Like, did you gravitate it towards like maybe like heavy bass, dubstep, or I don't know? Because when you hear that, it's so foreign to most musicians that where do you go from that? I would imagine you copy or maybe a little bit, but I don't know. For you specifically, what happened once you figured these people out? What did you start trying to learn? Because it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I was captivated by all of it, the entire broad spectrum at the time. Pretty much ranging from like the Skrillex stuff, which at that time was definitely what we would call like darker bass music, all the way up until all the way to the other side of the spectrum, which would be like Avicii. I was major Avicii fan. And again, it all came down to the fact that I learned that all of these guys were doing it with computers. Like Avicii made levels with FL Studio. I was like, holy shit. So it was discovering that where something probably went off in my head that was less about like, I really do like this music, which I did. I absolutely loved it. But something probably switched where it was less, a little bit less of, man, I really love this, to like, man, I really love this, and I think I could maybe do that. Like, I think I might be able to do something like that in time. Not like a Skrillex or an Avicii, but just, simply be able to make music with a computer. I played piano, I played trumpet as a kid. I wasn't really good at either. I mean, I held my own at the local recital, but like I was not any sort of like.
Oh, were you one of those kids that when they practiced trumpet, their parents were like, I figured that out because I played trumpet as a kid too, and I feel like I tortured my parents with the sound of that instrument when I was learning it.
Probably, to be honest with you. I also had braces, which like didn't help. I hated every second of it. My parents they definitely had to force me to play. I did not want to play either. Not piano, not trumpet, nothing. I didn't want to play anything. I hated it. In retrospect, I'm very glad for it. But yeah, I don't even remember what I was saying. I was saying
you learned how to play piano and trumpet, and you were figuring out that you could do this, that you could do the computer music.
Exactly. It's like when we're looking at these guys that are making music electronically, I was like, I might be able to do that. I really want to do that, and that kind of helped result in the sort of like the full circle, just my total captivation with the electronic music genre, rather than just like, I like heavy bass music, or I like progressive house, which is like what Avicii was doing. It was like all of it. Like I loved all of it. The electro from Dead Mouse, everything. I loved it all.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious, do you feel like you are, I don't know how to explain it better than this, but do you really thrive when you teach yourself stuff, or are you more in the formal learning capacity like a lot of people who need kind of like point A to point B to point C to point D, or do you prefer to just kind of dive into something and just figure it out as you go? Because based on what you've been telling me, you grew up on YouTube and you knew a little bit about music. I would guess that you love teaching yourself stuff, but I don't know. I'm just curious what you prefer.
Guess is 100% correct. I absolutely love teaching myself things. That was kind of the first instance that I got to experience of it in my life, where it was like, man, I have no idea how to do this. Let's just kind of trial and error until we get something out of it. But that was more than just like music. If I'm looking back in like 30, 40 years, fingers crossed we make it that far.
Here's hoping. I know.
Yeah, exactly. Not to be dark. I think I'm going to like look at music like above everything else, being one of the best experiences of my life. I think I'm also going to look at it as like a major character development for me personally, just because it really helped me learn that, like, even if it takes 10 years, which, that's kind of the point that I'm at right now for music. I started when I was 14. I'm 24. Wow. I think I can teach myself something. I think I could do something. Just like one of the most like empowering feelings in the world that I probably would have never came across if it wasn't for music.
Do you feel like because you immediately adopted this mentality, and I feel like a lot of musicians in the electronic scene are very close to your experience. I think some went more of like a traditional school route because that's a relatively new thing for electronic music. I think most people had to, like you did, start somewhere by watching tutorials or whatever. But I always am curious to ask what you think if you had gone more of a traditional route. Like, okay, I want to learn how to do music. Let me find myself a teacher. Do you think you would have ended up in the same spot, or maybe not even just in the same spot, but ended up with the same creative, freedom or power that you currently have because you taught yourself? And I guess the question right there is, which one is better? I'm not sure if either one is, but for you specifically, teaching yourself did work. But I'm wondering if you ever think about it, what would have happened had you been more traditional, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I don't know. For me personally, that's a tough one to answer. To be honest with you, I sought it out when I was learning.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was looking at, by the time I was like 16 or 17, I knew that I really, really had like a deep passion for it. And that it was probably something that I wanted to do with my life. I had a couple other things going at the time. So I was, between a few different things that I could potentially choose for life over the next couple of years. But I really, really wanted to do music. And I was, kind of unsure of my position at the time. It's just like, I didn't have any sort of credentials, right? I'm 16 or 17. I don't have any sort of, at that point in time, like even subjectively speaking, like good music. I didn't think that anything was really that good at the time.
As most teenagers do.
Sure. I didn't have any sort of like online presence. Not that I would have expected to at like 16 or 17 by any means. I don't think anybody really should. The couple kids I can think of that are that age and killing it right now are absolute legends. They're going to be icons within the next decade.
It's happening more and more and more, dude. It's crazy.
It is. It's insane. But I was just kind of like, where do I go from here? If I want to do this, what the heck am I going to do? I don't have anything to like base myself off of. So, I was looking at like, I can't even remember what it was called. We used to get like advertisements for it all the time on like the TV, on like the YouTube ads and stuff like that. There was like a production school where you'd basically like go there for college.
Icon?
Not Icon, because I knew of Icon, and Icon I believe was kind of really getting ramped up around that point in time. It was something else. I think it was maybe in like Arizona or something, but it was a much more like formal. Icon is kind of a little bit how can I say, like a little bit more forward thinking, a little bit like edgier. This was very like technical, maybe like an engineering school predominantly that had sort of adopted like a musical program, something like that. I was looking at that and being like, maybe do I need to go here? Like what do I need to do? Like how the heck do I like go into this? So I was kind of like seeking it out passively around that point in time. But ultimately, like I said, I had a couple other things going at that time that kind of took my focus away from being like 100% into music. So I kind of just like didn't really pursue any sort of formal measures like that and just kept doing what I was doing, which was like, producing on my parents' laptop and then my laptop, that kind of stuff. And just sort of continuing that self-taught journey from there. As to your question was, what do you think is better? That varies person to person. Over the pandemic, not to switch focus too much, but I actually, what I decided that I wanted to do with my time, because I was off the road at that point, I was completely home based, was teach, aspiring producers how to produce.
Nice.
So that's what I really put my focus into, and built a small little community sort of centered around that, and created a bunch of tools for people to use and a bunch of like instructional courses of just stuff that I've developed over the years, being like almost exclusively, I'd say like I'm probably upwards of 85% self-taught. And when I say 85%, I mean like that extra 15% was coming from a few people that I've stumbled across in my life that have given me some direction over the years, and like YouTube videos. Most of everything that I figured out was like extremely painful trial and error. Honest to God. So,
Oh, I know how that goes, man. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. But the really nice thing in doing that was that all the mistakes that I made, I was able to sort of take and help other people by being like, hey, I made this error before. This is exactly why you should, not do this. I could tell you why, because I did it and I figured out that there's a better way to do it. So that sort of proved to be extremely valuable at helping me be an instructor to others. Now, again, the sort of contrarian approach to that is, if you don't end up making that mistake yourself, is it really truly valid in your mind as being improper, right?
It's a good point. Yeah.
I do think that there is value in making mistakes. There's significant value in making mistakes, because that's one of the only ways that you can truly learn something is by, experiencing the consequences of doing it improperly. Then again, the other side of things is just that if you have somebody to sort of help you and guide you and teach you along the way, that can be very time advantageous. That can save you a lot of headache, right? It's like it's much easier to stay focused and to sort of stay on a more linear path if you have somebody to sort of correct your mistakes before you were to make them. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
For me personally, I wouldn't have done it any differently. If I had to go back and change anything, I mean, there's some things in like the music business side that I definitely would have done much differently. But as far as just like my own personal journey and learning to make music and do music and all that fun stuff, I wouldn't have changed anything. I'm very happy with the mistakes that I learned and the way that I was able to sort of grow from them. For somebody else, that might not be the case, and that's okay.
Yeah. And, I think you touched up on a lot of points that I think are very important. Number one, and this is all my opinion, but I do feel like I kind of echo what you're saying. I feel like for me specifically, I'm a little older than you, but in my journey from musician to producer and then kind of like a hybrid now, it was like you, very much trial and error, going from like YouTube videos to whatever. But I remember being younger and being doubtful of my own process, just because I've kind of had both some schooling, but a lot of being self-taught. And you find that a lot of people tend to be either one or the other. They're a huge proponent for either being self-taught or a huge proponent for schooling. And I think the key is everyone learns differently. For example, I would argue that someone like you who taught themselves through all the mistakes, you kind of went through the long process of learning everything. That makes you a very, very good teacher, because you understand the ins and outs of it. And I imagine your students are probably very grateful for that knowledge. But then I would argue there are people out there who don't operate well with so much information. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people who get overloaded with everything, and those are the people that really don't care about the mistakes. They're like, tell me what A, B, and C is, and I'll go and make a sentence. I am not like that. I remember for a long time, I was very self-conscious at the fact that I knew people who just picked things up quickly because they would ignore the mistakes. But I feel like, and this could be you, I'm not sure if it is you, but for me, I'm someone who needs to know the ins and outs of everything. And I do that by dissecting it on my own time. Like, I will go into something, I will make the million mistakes, and finally I will understand, I see why this doesn't work, and I can explain it in a million different ways. That works for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that works for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, like off of that, there's something almost very honorable about doing it that way as well, where you really dive in and kind of dissect everything. It's like you really truly want it at that point, as I'm sure, like you said, that's how it was for you. You really truly want to know the information that you're doing if you're willing to be able to go through, so much trial and error to get to that end result. I think there's for sure something to be said for that. And there's one thing to clarify, in that, because I mean, I might be sitting here right now and I'm saying like, teach yourself, and all my students are gonna listen to this and be like, what the heck? Like, you're coaching me. What's going on? No, there's a significant. I think there's a very significant difference between, you could still get help and be self-taught. It might be a little bit more of a middle ground as far as if we're technically discussing it. But there's a major difference between you being the primary driving force in accomplishing this learning and somebody else doing it, right? It's like somebody else holding your hand, walking you through the process, being like, okay, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Whereas the ultimate underlying factor there is that you're not the driving force behind your own journey. Somebody else is. You could still get help. You can reach out to somebody and be like, hey, I'm really confused. I've been struggling with this for a while. I just need to know what to do. And they can show you, and that can still be part of your own singular journey, because you're still the driving force behind it. I think if we're kind of looking at it that way.
Yeah, that is a very important distinction. And I'm grateful that you brought that up, because it's super important. There is a difference when someone's walking you through everything versus when you need someone to kind of guide you through. I'll give you an example. If you don't mind me giving you one of my examples. When I was first diving into learning how to produce, I used one of the songs I was really digging at the time by Demi Lovato, Sorry Not Sorry. I've said this story a couple times, but I feel like it's important. There's this part throughout the entire song. I looked up so many tutorials on how to do this song, and everybody showed you the exact same thing. It's basically just an 808 with some drums and some keys, right? But it never sounded like the radio version. I didn't understand why. It took me weeks, man. But one day in the car, when I was just blasting it, I just was like, fuck it, let me listen to it one more time. I picked up something very briefly in the intro, and what the producer did is he grabbed the bridge of a chant that they were doing, lowered it down super low, and just added all this distortion to it and put it super low in the mix, and it's throughout the entire song. It never stops. It just loops over and over and over again. And it was a light bulb moment. I was like, oh my God. So that's what he did. That's the big difference that no one ever talks about, is just grabbing the vocals, put them in the background throughout the whole entire song. That was a moment that I figured out on my own, and I felt so proud of it. And since then, I do a lot of the similar stuff. But I would argue there's a second example where I was trying to figure out how to separate vocals from a mix, and I couldn't figure it out how. And then I just had to look up YouTube videos, and I finally found one where it talked about parallel compression and also like multi-band compression overall in the mix. It's super complicated stuff. But once I watched it, I applied it. I'm like, okay, I didn't know where to look. That guy showed me how to do it. I'm grateful for that, and I added it to my arsenal. So it's about knowing when you need that, I guess I would say.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I do think on one side of the spectrum, it can be relatively naive to assume that you can learn everything on your own. It's like there's some things that, or even if you can, it's like, is that the best way to do it? Right? Is it really worth like all that headache to learn that by myself completely? Or should I just like ask? There's like a humility that comes in, I think, at some point. And I'm like you, I want to do it myself. I want to be like, I did it. It was me. But sometimes that's not the best way, I don't think. And I'm kind of learning that more in retrospect. It's also hard, if you don't have any contacts, right? Sometimes there's like, who do you ask? What are the resources available to you? I know nowadays, like, especially the pandemic, myself and so many of my peers are doing the exact same thing where we're helping aspiring producers try to, take their skills to the next level, and really, really step up their game as a producer. At least to my knowledge, that was not a thing when I was like a year 1, year 2, year 3 producer. I mean, even the YouTube videos back then, I can distinctly remember there was like 1 or 2 guys on YouTube. I'll never remember what their channel names were or anything, but like, in retrospect, I remember looking maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So I would have been on like year 6, right? And watching those videos that I was originally watching when I was like a year 1, year 2. And there was so much misinformation and just like poor technique. And it was almost just as bad as if I would have tried to figure it out myself. And nowadays you have literally, at least in electronic music, probably in just overall music as well, pop, hip hop, whatever. You have the best producers in each genre giving out information
Yeah.
for free, if not for free, for like $10, right? It's
Yeah.
like, it's so accessible now compared to what it was, and it's fantastic. That makes me really, really happy because, I don't, if it's possible to not, then I think people should have resources to not have to struggle like I did for 10 years trying to figure out, how to properly EQ a snare drum, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so I do, while I think that being the driving force, ultimately TLDR here on what we're talking about, I think that being the driving force behind your own learning is what's most important, but also the humility to know when to seek help, when to seek direction, and when to seek, the answers that you're looking for is also very important.
Yeah. I'm wondering, why do you think that specifically right now, there are so many creatives that are a lot more open to sharing their techniques? Just because I agree with you. I do feel like 5-10 years ago, one could argue that the internet was newer. There wasn't, like, no one really understood the formula just yet. That's probably a big factor of it. But I also understand that there needs to be a desire to do that. And you are absolutely right. There are so many people out there willing to help, putting out very useful tips. Some would argue way too much. I don't agree with that. But there is this shift. There was a shift that happened. I don't know how long ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. A lot of great professionals who are just sharing their knowledge that they probably had to fight to earn themselves. So absolutely. I don't know. Why do you, and you're doing it too. You have this desire to give back to people that are on the rise, and hopefully they can learn from you. Where does that come from? Because things have changed. And I'm wondering, for you at least, where did that come from?
That is a really good question. Looking back over the past decade or so, I think it's hard to answer, but I think we can maybe find an answer from just sort of observing the culture over the years, right? I'm going to try to be as minimally disrespectful as possible while I say this. Now, bear with me before, because I know that's a hell of a disclaimer.
Now, just be honest, man. Just go for it.
Back, I'd say like 10 years ago, the producers that were, at least in my opinion, now this actually could be very jaded now that I'm saying it out loud, but from the way that I remember it, the producers that were the best producers at the time were also the headliners. They were the ones that were main staging on Ultra Music Festival at 10 p.m. Right? Avicii was a festival headliner, Deadmau5 festival headliner. I guess even Skrillex at that time wasn't quite there, but he was probably maybe on like the lower end of the spectrum as far as like sizing goes. So I wouldn't have been surprised if he would have, like shared production techniques at that time. Regardless, sticking to the point that I'm trying to make here, I think that as time has gone on, we're just continuously experiencing younger and younger generations of producers that are exceptionally skilled in what they do. And they're I want to say that they're probably two things: their youth, as well as the matter of time in which it took for them to obtain their skills has made them more eager to want to share it. Maybe that originates from peer to peer. I remember in like 2015, I was still a garbage producer at the time, but I was in like a producing group, and we would just like share tips and tricks. We weren't disclosing that information publicly at that time. Me personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable because, like I said, I don't think I was very good. But we were sharing it amongst each other. I think as time would continue to go on, that would continue to happen more and more and more as more people are getting involved. More skills are being learned and acquired. More skills are being passed around in peer-to-peer groups, and then ultimately you sort of get to this point where that peer-to-peer group maybe is so large that it becomes practically public, and then it does become public, right? So as this generation of producers is rolling in, that is just so fantastic at what they do. I'm thinking of right now, there are some studs in electronic music, in bass music in particular, that are just making the most ridiculous sounds. They have impeccable engineering capabilities. They're really, really freaking good. And they're like 16, 17. maybe they're 20 or 21,
So
but they've
young.
been producing for 2 years. And I'm like, holy shit, I've been doing this for 10 years and you're fucking better than me. Like, how does this even happen? It's fantastic. But I think that's like an omen to just, how much information has sort of become available over the years, how many more people have been willing to share, because there's not some sort of like veil of secrecy anymore where it's like, oh, well, if I share how I did this, then I won't be a fucking headliner anymore. I'll somebody else will be a headliner. I almost think there was like this fear going on back then, at least in retrospect. Again, I could be completely jaded. That's just my interpretation. But almost this unwillingness to share an excessive information in fear that, those that would obtain those skills would essentially surmount those that had them in a career, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really know where it changed, but again, if you would ask me today and be like, yo, who are the best producers that you know of? I would list you off 10 producers right now, and not a single one of them would be a festival headliner. Not one. Because I just think that the newer generation is so talented and really, really adept at the skills that they've acquired over the years. And most of those skills come from sort of just like sharing with each other, learning from, the vast pool of information that's now out there, and not so much coming from, maybe more like a formal education, something of that sort. Not a dated skill set. I don't know. Maybe that makes no sense whatsoever, and I just wasted everybody's time. Sense. But that's kind of the way that I've seen it. Having been a producer for 10 years and watching the industry very, very closely for the past like 6 or 7.
Yeah. I feel like you nailed that like 100%, because it is true. I feel like the headliners, even just 10 years ago, which isn't that long ago, but in our lifespan it is, there was this level of, well, if I teach people how to do what I do, they're all going to steal it. I feel like things are almost opposite now. I feel like you can probably start getting successful a lot earlier by sharing what you know. And what's interesting too, this is a bit of like a sidetrack, but there are entirely brand new sides of this industry that keep popping up. One of those that, I've had the fortune of working with them, but like Splice, for example, right? Yeah. Splice, like they have charts now for sound packs and stuff. And there are producers out there. Splice. Isn't that so fascinating? There are producers out there who are making a killing on Splice, who are earning a lot more than performers are by just making dope ass sound packs. And their packs are like top 10 on Splice. And they're great, amazingly produced, sound designed sound packs, and that is a completely brand new industry. I mean, samples have been around for a long time, but not like they are now.
Not like this. Not even close. You're absolutely right. Splice was a game changer. I got on Splice very, very late. I think I might have hopped on around like 2017, which I know that it was sort of surging through the scene. Probably, I don't remember, maybe as early as like 2015 or so. But as soon as I got it, it was like my third eye had been propped open. I was like, holy shit, like these are the sounds that are available. Like I've been using like Vengeance 2011 samples, and like there's this is like, seriously, like that's insane. And it's just continued to grow from there and provide more resources, and even like the accessibility that it provides. For example, the sort of collaborative licensing that they do with like Xfer with Serum. You can rent to own. You can pay $10 a month for Serum for like a year and a half, and then you finally own it by the time you're done. That sort of accessibility, so where you can actually obtain like these industry standard plugins, even if you're a 16-year-old kid on a laptop in your bedroom, is just, it's providing so much more opportunity to people that are getting into this from a young, whether young absolute age as in they're like 16, or young age as in they're like 24, but they're 1 year old as a producer. It's just providing so much opportunity. It's really insane. It's fantastic.
Yeah. What's cool about it too, for anyone who doesn't know what Splice is, I imagine many of you do, but it's basically a marketplace where now it's expanding, where you can get a lot of music stuff that's for like the digital space, but samples on there, they have millions of samples that you can just download, drag and drop into your production, and it sounds radio ready, basically.
Yeah.
But what's cool about it, it's for me specifically, when I discovered it years ago, what was cool about it is that there were people like you, people that you would consider, legends of electronic music and other genres too, who succeeded prior to maybe like 5-6 years ago, setting up this base. Like they're the ones who like people like you again, providing your creativity and your sounds to this vast new generation that can just come in and hear what you're doing. They can just literally see the sample, drag and drop it, manipulate the sample if they want. But whereas before you had to learn how to sound design it, you had to learn how to go in there, use Serum and all massive back in the days, and just really like dial everything in. Now the process has been essentially cut in half, and you can really dive in deep or just produce anything that's in your head based on what you can find. But what's cool about it, again, is how people like you and others that came before are the ones that really kind of set up this foundation. And now more and more people are jumping in and helping build this entire new foundation, it's crazy. It's a beautiful thing, and it's crazy to see how fast it's continuing to grow. It still grows. It's insane.
It's really, it's amazing. And to go off of what you said even further, to kind of divert back to a point I was making a couple of minutes ago, it's just that process of continuing to sort of lift the veil of the secrecy of like what's going on, right? It's like instead of X producer having all these sounds that is like nobody knows how to like make, now all of a sudden there's this website that literally has their sounds on it. It's his sounds. Like he made those sounds and he made a splice pack, and there you can use them. You can use them yourself right now. You don't even have to know sound design if you don't want to, which there's certainly a value in understanding sound design. Don't get me wrong. But there's also a value with just being able to be a writer and be adept in, writing music and arranging music. And that accessibility is just so much more forward now than it was, however many years ago with like the Vengeance and whatnot. That just is good at the time. It's just very dated, and it's still, at least for me, it was all that I had for like many, many years up until I discovered Splice.
Yeah. Knowing what you know now and seeing how your students are doing and how the industry is changing, I imagine I know your answer, but I'm curious, do you ever feel intimidated? Does your mind ever sort of just kind of venture off and you start thinking about what ifs? Like, you're right. There's so many talented young people, and they keep getting younger and younger, and they learn faster and faster. That's something you just can't change ever. But I'm wondering, as someone like you who's been in the industry, you kind of have, you've established yourself as where you need to be, and you continue to grow. But now that you're seeing a lot of people and the tools that they have that you and I didn't have, does that ever bother you or ever like get in your head at any point? I don't know if it does. I'm just curious.
No. There might have been a point in time where it did, from sort of like a threatening perspective, but I don't really feel that way at all anymore. It really comes down to one of these things, right? It's like you either have to have trust in your own skill set and your abilities to be able to, yourself push things to the next level for yourself, for your music, or if you don't have that confidence in your own abilities, then you need to find it. Like you need to do the work in order to get to that point. I do know of other producers that, in just like having spoken with them over the years, that you can tell that they do feel relatively threatened by sort of the empowered younger generation of producers that are extremely skilled. But the thing is that they earned those skills, right? It's like they came across those skills by working on themselves as music producers and as artists in order to obtain them and to be able to execute them and make really cool music and stuff that people enjoy. So if you're in a position where, you're somebody like me, I'm by no means a veteran, but I have been touring for 4 years minus COVID, which might make it 3. I don't know. I kind of lost count.
About 3, yeah, probably.
But, within the industry, probably I'd say since like 2017, so the better part of 4 years, anybody that's like in that position, if they're feeling threatened, like, bro, you got to look at these are kids, man. Like they're literal kids and they're making amazing music. That's not something to feel threatened by. That's something feel appreciative of.
Yeah.
That's essentially saying that, you know, the groundwork that was laid by, you know, people that came before me has manifested into such an incredible thing to look at right now, to where these kids are just making absolutely incredible music, with the skills that they have. You know, maybe they haven't been producing for for sure they haven't been producing for 10 years. Half of them are, you know, not even in their 20s yet, right?
Yeah. Not even in college yet. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But that's something where, you know, again, going back to what I was saying, if you feel threatened by that as a musician, then that just means that, like, you probably haven't put in as much work as these kids. They've worked for it. They've earned their abilities as a producer. They've earned, you know, the I don't quite understand
The
how to
cred.
say it. Yeah, exactly. It's like they've earned their skill sets to be able to make the music that they're making. If you feel threatened by that, then probably time to get back in Ableton and figure some stuff out, right?
Yeah.
But no, I don't think that way at all. I think it's fantastic that there's so much accessibility now, and there's so many cool artists that are doing fantastic things, and pushing genres forward. Subgenres are being pushed forward all over the place, by producers that, you know, are an entirely new coming in generation, and it's fantastic. It's really, really cool to watch.
Yeah. Off of that, I do think you're right. I do think that the solution to being self-conscious about something is probably just proving it to yourself that you are, you know, worth your work if you've put in the work. And that's
Absolutely.
subjective, obviously. But I'm curious for you, do you actively try to keep yourself sharp in terms of like what's new, if there's new plugins out there, or do you focus mostly on just the stuff that you already know, or maybe somewhere in between? But I do feel like you are incredibly confident based on how you've been speaking about yourself. And I know for a fact and firsthand that it's an easy slope to fall into when someone has succeeded for a while and then maybe they took a break, or maybe they just didn't notice things change. All of a sudden you are awakened to, all, like we've been talking about, tons of young talent. And if you haven't been keeping yourself sharp or really focusing on understanding who you are as an artist, it can be very easy to fall into that rut of like, oh shit, you know, like, and then blaming everything else. But you are not. You're confident, and clearly you've put in the work. So I'm wondering if that's the reason that is because you're constantly keeping yourself sharp. Maybe you do some mental work. I don't know, but you know who you are. So I'm wondering where that comes from.
Well, it's kind of a combination of things for me personally. I mean, if I ever lost my career to a generation that was younger than me, it would be because of a lack of effort on my part. In my opinion, I don't think that it's not mine to be taken away from me. It's something that I have because I've been given it by the community and the genre and the industry. If that kind of makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
So it's like my responsibility is to, you know, continue to push myself forward, as a musician, as a person, and, you know, try to do cool things, for the sake of the genre and for the sake of, you know, my fans, right? That enjoy my music. I want to make them happy. I want to give them stuff that they enjoy. And if I were to ever not be doing that, then again, it's not mine to be taken away from me. It's something that is 100% up for grabs. It's not, the way that I'm kind of alluding to it is as if it's like a competition, which it's not that either. It's just something that, like, it's very hard to describe with words. You need to be mindful and aware of the gift that you've been given and understand that to a certain degree it was given to you in the first place because of effort that you put in at one point in time, right? The failure to continue to keep up with that effort means that, you know, you might no longer deserve that, right? Somebody else that's really, you know, focusing on themselves, focusing on their music, focusing on their work and their craft, maybe they deserve it more. You know, I do see some of the older generation of producers, kind of like you said, get kind of lazy, just like take much time away from it, and then when they come back, you could tell it's like they're kind of just rusty. They don't really have it all together anymore. on one side of the knife, that could be okay, right? It's like you have to look at that. That's a person. That's not just an artist. That's a human being. If they needed time to get away from whatever they're doing, or if they have other interests, that's fantastic. Not everything is about music, right? So good for them for doing what they need to take care of themselves, if that is the case, right? If somebody's just like downright lazy, or they just don't care about music, right? Or they're just like, whatever sort of like negative thing that person might be experience, whatever sort of negative sentiment they may have, that's when it becomes kind of obvious that they just don't really like care. And in my opinion, in that regard, those younger kids that are passionate should take the gift that was given to that older generation producer, and it should now be theirs. They're the ones that are doing this now, For myself, kind of like what you asked, like what do I do? For me, I'm not afraid of losing my career to this younger generation, because again, exactly what I told you, like it's not really mine in the first place. Like, so if I were to lose it, it's okay, like it really is. What I do to better myself as a musician is kind of, what you had said. You had said something along the lines of like a middle ground, right? The middle ground that I sort of occupy is I try to stay as true to what I like and what I've been doing as possible. But I'm also, I like to really experience what's going on in the genre and in the subgenres of the electronic music in which I'm sort of in the territory of. I like to listen to what these younger kids are doing, what sort of cool stuff they're making. And with that, I really like to get inspired by it and try to do some cool stuff like that myself. Challenge myself to make cooler sounds, challenge myself to, be a better engineer, right? Make better sounding music, better quality music, all that fun stuff. It's sort of just this perpetual journey, right? It doesn't stop. You don't reach a singularity point as a producer where you know everything and you're all of a sudden some indestructible, inconquerable figure.
Right.
It's something that goes on forever. You need to be a student forever. You need to continue to learn forever. You need to continue to trial and error forever, as long as you want to be doing music well, and pushing music forward. And if not, there's nothing wrong with that. There's people that make music that isn't exactly pushing anything forward, and it's still fantastic. But that's kind of like a side tangent. I don't need to get into anything like that. All that I'm saying is that what I like to do is I like to sort of combine those two things, like what you said, where it's like I'm taking what I've learned over the years and what I enjoy doing for my own music, and also taking inspiration from these young kids that are making absolutely incredible material.
Yeah. I got to say, man, you are incredibly wise. You speak like a very wise older person. I'm not going to say an old person, but you're 24 years old, but the fact that what you just previously said could be a quote in itself. The fact that you view your position as a gift and not as something you own is such a breath of fresh air, because I feel like, and this is speculation, I've been around the industry for a little bit, but it's older than me and there are way wiser people out there than me. But I do feel like there is this sort of sentiment amongst a lot of artists, and this isn't just in electronic music. I would argue this is across the board.
Absolutely.
That the position is something to be conquered, that it is something to be obtained, and then it's yours, and then it becomes an obsession. There's few people out there that have achieved a status where no matter what they do, they're always going to be famous, right? They're always going to be successful, and they took a lot of effort to get there. But I feel like the way you view things is it's such a better way to view it. This gift that you've been given by the community, by the people who are interested in music, that decided to lend you their ear because you were putting in the effort and you made creative things that capture their attention. It's cool to know that you view it that way, that you got it, you earned it, but it can be taken away at any point if you also don't continue, contributing to that community. And I feel like that is something that a lot of people are starting to tap into, but I do feel like there is still this like sentiment of like, I want to be famous and I want to get that. And then once you get there, you can get lazy because it's easy to do. Once you get there, like it's hard to keep yourself, getting better. It's like if you were the fastest runner in the world, would you go back and continue running, or would you just kind of be like, wow, I won? That's kind of the difference in character right there. But I'm just glad to hear where your mind is at. I think it's pretty cool.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I like that comparison that you made there with like the runner. So I come from, ironically enough, I come from like track and field as a background.
Hey, I'm a runner too.
Beautiful. Oh, I love it.
Cheers.
I actually I did the throws events in high school and for a little bit in college before I stopped college to do music. And it was kind of the same thing, right? It's like, it was a little bit more one-sided with track and field in particular, which I think is different from other sports because it's not a team sport, right? Team sport, you have to rely on others. With track and field, you're pretty much exclusively relying on yourself. You know, in the runs, the throws, the jumps, everything. Whatever work you put in is what you get out, right? So if you're training 5 days a week, and you know you're doing all the right stuff, you're lifting, you're practicing every day, all that fun stuff, and you know you have care and you exercise, diligence towards your craft. That's going to be reflected as time goes on. Music is a lot different. It's not something that you really earn by yourself. Again, that's kind of what I was referring to when I say that, like, I don't see it as something that you go out and score. It's something that is given to you by the community, and by the fans of your music, right? Because you don't really have like control over them, right? Like you don't have, you're not able to exercise, like I said, control over their feelings towards your music, towards anybody else's music. And that's why it's really irrelevant to kind of look at it as if it's like a competition or like something where you can like overtake others, where you can really overtake anything, even overtake yourself, right?
Yeah.
We kind of live in a generation where it's really unfortunate. I mean, this is kind of how music has always been in terms of an industry, where everybody's obsession is with, numbers. Everybody's obsession is with statistics, industry accolades, things like that. And the thing is just the second that you take a step back and you think about those things as not being earned, but being given, it gives you a completely different perspective on what's actually going on there. Completely different perspective. If you think that everybody earned every single thing that you did, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I was like this for a very long time, it will drive you fucking crazy. Absolutely crazy. Because you can't do it. Like I can say that I've put in so many hours and worked really, really hard on all the various things that I've done for my project over the years. And that's, ultimately because I love it. But like, there was a lot of that was almost like this like toxic feeling where it's like, well, if you just keep working, you'll do better. If you keep working, you'll make it further, right? You'll expand your career by just doing more, do more, right?
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And that's a really, really unfortunate mindset to be in, and I'm afraid for watching the younger generation as they come up, them sort of falling into that same trap, where it's like they're watching all these accolades and they're watching all these artists that have come from before, and they're not fully understanding that there's such a vast amount of random selection that goes on here, right? It's like, especially within the industry, you got so many agents, you have so many managers that are just like propping these artists up. Maybe it's because their music is good. Sure, absolutely. There's other people that have good music that's not happening to. That's fine. It's not a fair game, and to look at it as if it is just not doing yourself justice. So again, I don't even remember why I started talking about that. I think it was because we were looking at it as status in music as a gift, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, you don't earn it. You got it because of something that you did that people appreciated, and you should be appreciative that people appreciated it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm so excited you brought that up because that is something that I've talked about a couple times, and it always comes up when you're talking, in the back rooms or whatever with people. But it's so interesting because this isn't just unique to music. This happens in a lot of other industries too. And it's so fascinating because we are, like we talked about earlier. And by the way, I know we hit the hour mark,
no,
but I
fine.
love this. Are we good? Okay.
You're good.
Excellent. I love talking to you, dude. You're a very wise dude.
Likewise.
I appreciate that. But here's the interesting thing. Like, I feel like going back a little bit, what we talked about earlier, there was this moment in time for a very long time prior to the internet. And then as the internet became a thing where a lot of information was held by gatekeepers, right? And the information that got out wasn't the greatest. But lately now we have a lot of information and it's great. And you can do a lot of cool stuff. But at the same time, there is also, from what I've noticed from other industries, and I'm hoping you can help me with like the music industry, there is this sentiment everywhere that, like you said, if you just work hard, it'll happen, right? Like if you just every waking minute of every day, if you're not working on this, you suck. And it is echoed by so many other people who've already kind of made it. And that's the message that they're all delivering. And every now and then you'll find someone who's a little bit more realistic, who's very much like, well, yeah, but I came from a wealthy family and I had, some advantages, but I also was smart with that advantage. And that's where the key is. But people tend to ignore that because it's not as flashy as when you're, the truth isn't as flashy as when someone's like, I just worked hard for 10,000 hours and I was gifted this. Yeah, dude, move to LA and you will meet like 3 million people who are all incredibly good and trying to achieve the same thing. And I find that the people that really succeed, and again, there is this sense of random, but it is really the people who chime in to what they like and what they feel is unique about them. And that takes a lot of effort to do, but it's clearly something you did. You understood what mattered to you. And at some point, the community resonated with what you liked. And therefore, you were given this gift. I don't know, man. Like, I don't even know what my question there is, but it is more of an expression of frustration that there is not misinformation. There's just a very selective, like there's a lot of information out there helping you achieve what you want to do. But in terms of the mental side of it, there's not a lot of people like being encouraging and being like, hey, be aware of a lot of this stuff. Like, there's a lot of really good people out there. You got to just chime in on what you like. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here, but I don't know. I'm curious what you think about that.
For sure. To sort of go off of where you originally led, there's a really borderline toxic sort of stigma that goes kind of saying like, what do you want, Alexa? No, sorry.
Go away, Alexa. You don't
go
like
away.
It. I'm just kidding.
No, I don't. That says, like you said, it's like you got to be working all the time, as hard as you can, 24/7. Stop sleeping. It's a waste of time. Like that kind of thing. And it's just like there are certainly many things in life where they require a vast amount of dedication and effort, for sure. When we're talking specifically about music, it still applies, but don't try to directly correlate that to your own. Do not correlate that to any single thing other than your own personal growth. And when I say personal, I'm not talking about your Twitter page's amount of followers. I'm not talking about your YouTube channel's amount of views, any of that shit. I'm talking about how good are you at writing music, right? Like, how good are you at doing sound design? How good are you at arranging? How good are you at finishing songs that you've started? Things like that, right? Like, these are in my opinion, the most important things, right? The betterment of yourself as a musician, or if you want to make it broad and philosophical, right? Fuck it. Like, just in general, as a person, the things that you do as a person, the betterment of yourself as a person is extremely important, and it does require a vast amount of work. But where I see so many people, myself in the past included, myself in the current included, from time to time, of course, get really wrapped up in is when that personal growth does not equate to like external, outside, world looking in growth. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
that's when things get really bad, because that's when you start to feel almost like an entitlement complex. You're like, well, I've been working.
Yep.
Why don't I have this? Why don't I
Yep.
get this Spotify playlisting? Why didn't I go get this new job? Why didn't I, do thus? Why didn't I win the fucking Grammy? Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's different depending on what sort of environment you're in, what field you're in, what status you are in that field, so on and so forth. But it never really changes. But when you start to look at it as if it's complete random selection and totally separate from the stuff that you're doing for yourself, that kind of changes the perspective quite a bit.
Yeah.
That makes it a lot more, in my opinion, bearable, a lot more tolerable to kind of just be like, okay, like that artist got that festival slot. That artist did that thing. They got that award. I didn't. Doesn't mean I'm any worse. Doesn't mean anything. Literally does not mean anything at all. It was complete random selection. Good for them. I'm happy for them. I'm very happy for them. It's fantastic because they get to experience this. It's an extremely happy moment for them. I'm very glad for them. That's it. That's it. That's literally it.
Yeah, so, man. Spoken like a true pro, man. Because I have to echo what you're saying, because this is stuff I've talked with my partner and other people who I feel like have been through the ringer and have come out better people, because it is like we've been talking about. And in this day and age, I sound like such an old guy, but I'm not. But it's, I mean, I feel like
you.
we're living through it. So I feel like we have.
You're
like
in your 20s, right?
I mean, I just turned 30. So I was in my 20s for a while. Thank you. And I actually don't mind being 30.
I wouldn't mind being 30 either. I'm very excited for it, although it can still take its time. But no, both of us are still young as fuck. Very, very young.
As fuck,
but
yeah.
It doesn't matter. I totally hear what you're saying, because trust me, there's quite a bit oops, I minimized my window. There's quite a bit of experience to be gained from working within a field for so long. Like you have, I have. I'm probably not quite up to where you are, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Oh, you've achieved a lot. And here's the reality of what we're saying, which I really just, it's important for me to say it, and I feel like it's important for other people to really understand it. And I do feel like the message is getting across, across the board. You can see it naturally coming into play already. Mm-hmm. But there does need to be awareness of how what we've been discussing, the randomness of it all, and that at the end of the day, there is no one formula to succeed. The problem is right now, I feel like there's been a lot of people who have really just pushed for this narrative of like, work really, really hard and you're going to be happy and you can see the results. Well, it's not about the results. I know it sounds corny to say that. It is the corniest thing to say that, but it is generally true. You tend to be a lot happier when you view things the way that you're suggesting, when you realize, the gift that you've been given, the community that offers you that gift, that comes down to you, period. Like, it doesn't come down to the hours you put in. It doesn't come down to like all these bunch of external factors. It really doesn't. I mean, yes, they come into play to some extent. But like we've been talking about, I can name you at least a couple hundred people that I know firsthand are checking off all those boxes that you're supposed to have. And, I love them and they're incredibly talented, but their expectations are probably what's holding them back. In my opinion, in my genuine opinion, there is something beautiful to being able to let go of those expectations and just do you. And hope for the best kind of thing. That sounds so depressing, but it's not that. It really isn't. It's a good place to be in. It's hard to explain in words, to be honest.
No, I hear you exactly. It's holding those expectations too close is what is really dangerous. And I'm in the same boat as you. It's like the one thing that I hope to sort of get out there and sort of speak into the world, especially for that younger generation of producers, musicians, or really whoever is listening that has a relative amount of inexperience in what they're doing, enough to the point where they can feel really bad about themselves, right? Is just that it's really, really difficult to deal with. And when you have those expectations and you sort of have that way of thinking as to where you are deserving of things, and you are, entitled to certain, whatever it may be, accolades, milestones, however you want to think about it. It's a very, very slippery slope. Very, very slippery slope. And again, exercising introspective judgment compared to external judgment is a lot healthier. Just, work on yourself, work on bettering yourself, work on, what can you do to take yourself to the next level? Not what can you do to take your career, which is completely determined by all these random people you've never met in your entire life. Yeah. Likely will never meet every single one of them. Not them, not that, not how can you lift that up? Look at how you can lift yourself up. Look at how you can lift others up. Right.
Yeah.
It's
a beautiful
much
message,
different.
Man.
It's a much different way of looking at things. And I hope that somebody that is listening can actually like understand that and like take it away and not just hear it and have it go like in one ear and out the other. Cause it's the most important thing. And I teach a lot of the kids, I don't want to say kids. I keep saying kids. What I mean by that is literally just like any producer that's mildly young. I keep, teaching them like that as well, right? It's like when I'm talking to them about making music and doing sound design and stuff like that, I'm also telling them, just like manage your expectations, So some people get disappointed because they're like, oh, I feel like I should be so much better than I am. I'm like, no, you're exactly where you need to be. You're doing everything that you possibly can. This isn't a rat race. You're not seeing how good you are compared to somebody else. You're seeing how good you are compared to yourself. Mm-hmm. And then let those external factors sort of figure themselves out the way that they were meant to be figured out. Maybe you're not ever going to get a career as a musician. Sorry. That might just not be the way that the external factors are going to work out in your favor. And that doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. That just means that is how the random selection is going to work in your favor for what you're doing. The one thing that I will say, though, to sort of take a turn off of everything we've been talking about for so long, sort of a less laissez-faire sort of mentality here, though, is that what I have found as time has gone on in my very short amount of time in the music industry, but just with other things as well, is that the more effort that you put in, the higher your chances of achieving the results that you want through that random selection are, right? So it's like, you can't be like, okay, if I spend 1,000 hours doing this, I'm going to get this. That's just what's going to happen. Absolute done deal. No, that's not how that works, especially not in music. Music is the last thing that's going to happen in.
Right.
However, if you just continue to work, continue to better yourself, continue to take yourself from A to B to C to D to E to F and not give up and, continue to take care of yourself, be healthy, not give into these toxic mentalities that we're discussing, you're optimizing yourself for those successful opportunities to come your way, for good things that you're seeing happen to others that maybe don't have as much of a track record as you, right? Seeing those things happen to them, it's much more likely for them to happen to you moving forward, as long as you just keep going. Like, don't quit, right? It's like the more that you do, the better the chances are that it does end up happening. And that's something that's very important that not a lot of people get, because some people might listen to what we just said over the past 30 minutes and be like, oh, well, if it's complete random selection, why do I even fucking try? Like, I might as well just give up. Like, I'm not that good right now. Chances are that if I keep working, I'll get a little bit better, but maybe I'll never have a career. No, don't think like that. That's not the way to think. You could still have some sort of a career as long as you don't give up, right? Like, if you do something, think about it this way. Tell me this, like, honestly, who do you know that has done something for 30 years that is bad at what they do?
Nobody.
Exactly. If you do something long enough, you're going to get good at it. If you're good enough at anything, you will find a way to, if you want to work in that field, cool, you can work in it. If you just want to do it at an elite level as a hobby, you can do that too, right?
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
So don't quit. That's the other,
dude, no,
the other
seriously.
cliche.
Thank you for adding that. All this stuff is cliche, but it's cliche because it's true. And the reality of it all, it's important. It needs to be heard. Said. Exactly. And the reality is, I think the takeaway of this before moving on, it's managing the expectations. I think that is the important part. Everybody can make it, in my opinion, and everybody can succeed, but it's about knowing yourself first, as opposed to making the results the source of your inspiration. That's not going to help. It's really doing it for you. And that's corny in itself too, but it's
much harder to do as well.
Exactly. But it is, honestly, in my opinion, the right way, or the very healthy way of doing it. Dude, I've taken up a lot of your time, but I love talking to you, dude.
No, likewise, man. I really appreciate you having me on and us being able to talk about all this. It's really good. Really,
I don't know
really good.
I don't know how much time you still have left, but I want to ask you a couple more things.
I'm cool. Yeah, absolutely. Shoot away.
Okay, cool. Because one of the things that I know about you, and this is actually, I was going to tie this in a little bit earlier, but I decided, fuck it. I think now is the perfect time. You also do other things, don't you? Other than just music, you kind of, I try. Well, you exist.
I do my best.
Exist, you eat, you do. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're also heavily involved with a lot of the production side of your music. And I don't mean just the music itself, but you, if I'm not mistaken, you do a lot of the designs and animation for your own show, right? Is that true or no?
I do. That is true, yes.
Okay. And this is where I find it fascinating. I was going to bring it up earlier, but I do think right now is the perfect time that, again, me speaking from my experience, and I was talking about this with Smile and Athena not that long ago, how just a couple years ago, it was very much, the vibe I was getting from the musician world was, you only do music and that's it. You know, so if you're a musician or a producer or engineer, you focus all your time and energy on that. If you spend it on other areas, what are you doing? You must not be serious in your craft. That's the world I grew up in. And I have always been a multitasker. It took me a long time to be
Let's go. Yep.
I mean, the truth is, like, there's a lot of things I never talk about on the podcast, but like, aside from being a drummer and a podcaster, you know, I come from the fashion world too. I did designs for that. I do a lot of painting. I do like investing. Like, there's a lot of things that I have always been involved in that I never felt comfortable talking about. But I noticed over the past, like, maybe 2-3 years, things changed. It became okay to be a multitasker. And it's so interesting that it changed. But I guess to start talking about it a little bit, for you specifically, do you feel like being able to jump from music to working on designs and animation and all that stuff, does that help you in your creativity when it comes back to music, to be able to take a step away from what you're doing and do other creative stuff? Or maybe not. I don't know. But I think that's a good place to start.
It doesn't just help me. It's by far the best thing I've ever done. The best thing that I've ever learned about being a creative and just being a working person in anything, right? Creative work especially. Being able to sort of jump between different things that I'm passionate about and that I'm excited about is, I can't express how much it's just like helped me maintain excitement, be able to exercise discipline and focus, things like that. It's extremely beneficial. So like I started just to like give you a little bit of background and like to like sort of what I've done. I'll disclaim, I'm still a newbie in like 3D, but I absolutely love it. I do 3D animation, modeling, all that fun stuff. I use
what software do you use?
Blender.
Blender. Yeah.
Yes. Blender's free, and that was part of the incentive as to why I got into it, because Cinema 4D
super powerful
was
software too, guys. Blender.
Yes. If anybody is interested in doing that sort of thing that's listening, Blender is completely free. Like the freest of the
free. Yeah.
So when we're having like the workstation conversation for music, it's like, you know, Logic, Ableton, FL Studio, Pro Tools, none of them free. GarageBand, if you have a Mac, maybe free, but I'd say that's a little bit inferior. 3D, Blender is up to par with Cinema 4D, Maya, all those other industry standard workstations for the multimedia format, and it's completely free. It's God bless the soul of the founders of that company, because they've they've done so much for the digital art community. It's insane. Anyways, I got into Blender several years ago, probably it's about 3 years ago now. It was 2018. And the reason why was just because I thought it would be cool to be able to do, artwork for my own project. I was unhappy at the time with some of the contractors that I had. Not unhappy with the contractors. They did excellent work. It just wasn't what I was really looking for myself. They weren't quite understanding my vision. I was having trouble myself executing the communication so that they could understand what I wanted to do. So I was just like, screw it. Let's just see, can I do this myself? I was like, well, I already learned music to a reasonable enough degree. I'm sure I can learn this to a reasonable enough degree if I just jump in and take some time to do it. So, that's kind of all that really went into it. I just wanted to sort of be able to do stuff for my own project. Here I am 3 years later, Now, granted, the one thing that I will say is that I've been doing it for 3, um, uh, I can't think of the word that I want to use. I was going to say like quantitative years or something like that, meaning like the quantity of years that I've been doing it is not reflective of the actual amount of time that I've been doing it, because I will go many, many months without actually like touching it, because I'm working on music, right? I'm doing multiple things. So I'm, not really at like a 3-year level yet. I think I'm significantly like inferior to where another 3-year-old in that field would be. Right. But that's okay. I'm not in it to just instantly be the best of the best. I don't even care about that. I just want to do it because I think it's really cool and I think it's really fun. Same thing as music. Yeah, that's kind of where I am right now. Just doing Blender 3D stuff. It's a blast. It's excellent. I can't remember if you asked another question sort of stacking on top of that or not.
Oh no, it's fine. I mean, that's basically the question I had. Sure. Was you answered how if you felt it was beneficial switching back and forth between those. But like what's interesting about Blender, which I know we keep shouting it out, but it's amazing. I got introduced to it by a friend. I'm not good at 3D stuff at all. I just kind of toyed around with it a little bit. Sure. But it's amazing that its capabilities are very similar to some of the industry standards like Maya. Obviously, Maya and some of the other ones probably have extra things they can do, but you don't need it unless you're making movies. But exactly. But I guess one thing I'm curious about, 3D art is one of those things where it's not new. Like it's been around since the 90s, but lately it's been changing so fast that one can consider it kind of a new side of the industry. To go from making music and producing and then designing your own artwork is another thing. But then designing your own 3D artwork to put on displays and stuff, I imagine that's a huge ass leap. So I guess what I'm curious is, how long did it take for you to feel comfortable? I'm not even sure if you still feel comfortable, but to like design something from scratch and then be like, hey, let's put this up on the monitors and let's see what people think. Because I would be very concerned that it would just glitch out on me and look like completely ridiculous. But I don't know. You seem very comfortable with it, so I'm curious.
I mean, yeah. To answer your question, yeah, we're still getting comfortable with it. That's for sure. It's a long process. I found that I tell people all the time, they're like, "Yo, like, how do you do that stuff? Like, is it hard? Like, is it difficult?" I'm like, it is at least a magnitude of 8 times more difficult than music. At least it is insanely difficult. Not even talking from a creative perspective, right? As like a creative person, you can exercise your creativity, you can build it up. If you're a lesser creative person, whatever, doesn't matter. That's out of the picture. Simply speaking, from a technical standpoint, it is mind-bogglingly more intricate than music, like leaps and bounds. It's insane, absolutely insane. So yeah, we're still getting comfortable with it. I'm aiming for like maybe year 8. I'll feel good about it. So like, let's see,
5 more years to go.
Yeah, 2026 sounds about like a good target. So yeah, it's hard. It's really hard, but it's a lot of fun. The industry, the digital art industry is doing some really, really, really cool stuff. I'm sure you've seen like NFTs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's really cool that it's getting its own sort of entertainment medium, or I don't want to say entertainment. That's not really the right classification to use for it, but it's getting its own sort of stage is what I'm trying to say, which is really, really cool for the people that do that sort of thing. For me, it's kind of still just like, it's the same thing as like when I first got into it. Like, there have been times where I was like, man, I really like this. I kind of want to take it more seriously. But then I'm like, oh, I also really like music too. And it just kind of just like stays in this like static position of being like, oh man, I really like music. I also like 3D. Let's just keep doing them together and just keep having fun. That's probably all that it'll ever amount to.
It's a sweet spot right there. That's the sweet spot.
It is.
Yeah.
If I had one regret, excuse me, it's simply that I just didn't get into it earlier. I wish I would have also got into 3D when I was like, 14, 15 roughly, instead of just music. That would have been a lot of fun, because I probably could have, the sort of creative hiccups that I had in music, and also the creative hiccups that I had in 3D. It's like, if you kind of would have put them in tandem, I feel like, now being like a year 10 on music, it's like that would fare really well with a year 10 in digital art as well. Whereas there's a little bit of discrepancy between year 10 and year 3 for me, at least internally, but it's okay. Like I said, we're looking at 2026. We're going to be making really cool shit.
Dude, hell yeah. You know, it's funny. It's like when I started boxing, it's funny when you're good at something, and this, I feel like this is the same for everybody, but when you become like pretty good at something, if not a master at a craft, for me, it was drumming. I have been doing it for like 20 years, right? So I'm pretty damn good at it. But when you start a brand new craft that you're really interested in, and you know that you have a passion for it, and having to go through the basics all over again, having to do it really slow, and then just failing all the time, it's a weird like psychological thing of like, damn it, coming from being a master from this side to then being an absolute noob to this side. It's not discouraging by any means, but you do feel kind of weird having those two opposite spectrums. But I do feel like they help each other out, though, because it did humble me a little bit with like the drumming stuff. You know, I don't practice drumming as much as I used to, because for me, it's more of I've learned a lot of that instrument, but it's really more of I don't want to say a job now, but I kind of know what to do now.
Exactly.
And so there aren't a lot of things that I need to really refresh on unless there's something new. But with the boxing thing, it's really cool. Even though I've been boxing for a while now, but when I started doing it, it's this really cool perspective of like, wow, I like feeling like that beginner all over again. It's really cool to be figuring it out as I go along. I don't know. I just feel like it's a really cool space to be in.
That's a great take. I'm the same exact way. I love doing new things because you're like, damn, like this is cool. Like, I don't know anything about it. It's kind of frustrating because I fucking suck, but like, I also love it. It's really cool. I'm the same exact way as you. It is also on another token. It's like very humbling. It kind of makes you appreciate like the other skill that you have, that you spend so much time in honing, and being like, wow, like, yeah, like, man, I can really experience now, with this new thing that I'm doing, how tough that one was before. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I forgot. Like, I've been doing it for so long that I forgot it. It comes so natural now. It
reminds you of your hard work. It reminds you of all the work and time you put into that.
All the effort that you put in. Yeah, it's a good reminder of that. But you know, the flip side is exactly what you said, right? It's like when you feel like really upset because you're like, damn, like I suck. Like this is really hard. You can kind of be like, well, it's nothing new. I sucked at that too when I started, but I did it. Exactly. It just took some time. And that's almost, it's like a good character anchor to have where, you know, you've done something cool. You've done something that you've gotten pretty good at. And now if you're doing a new thing, you can be like, okay, yeah, like sure. Right now I'm not where I want to be at all, but we can get there because we already did it. We did it once. We can certainly do it twice. In fact, we could probably do it better this time because we have the humility to understand that as part of the process. We're not going to like go throw ourselves off the roof every 20 seconds because we can't understand what to do.
Exactly. You nailed it right there, man. I'm curious when it comes to your visuals. This is something I always wanted to ask somebody that was in the visual, like VFX space, because I'm not an expert in that. But anytime
don't worry.
Well, here's the thing. You're more of an expert than me. But what's fascinating is, especially with electronic music, I would argue that live music is starting to adapt to that somewhat, but the visual,
I know what you're saying and I like it. Yep.
Okay,
keep going.
Okay. Because here's the thing. Visuals, in my opinion, for the longest time was just like an added part to the music, right? And people came to watch the artist or whatever perform. But electronic music, I would argue, was probably the first, if not one of the first, to make visuals equally as important as the music that was being played. And I've always wondered what goes into making these visuals, especially to make them fit right with what's being played, to be able to emote what the song is playing. Like, it's easy when you watch it, but to sit there and like have a blank space like Blender and be like, okay, what do I add? Like, I mean, I sound like such a noob, but I don't know. Does that make sense what I'm asking? I want to dissect this because it's so fucking fascinating.
Let's do it. Let's dissect this. This is cool. This is a really cool question. So for whoever's listening that actually has interest in this stuff, I feel like we're going to create one VJ off of this. At least one. One person is going to go
Fingers
from listening to this to doing this sort of thing as a profession. All right.
It's a thriving industry, so it's smart. Yeah.
Exactly. It's going to be huge. So first of all, you have the song, right? So somebody makes a song, you make a song, whatever. It doesn't matter. You have a song. That's what we're going off of here. So let's say that you want to make a visual to that song. The first thing that you want to do is you're just going to create like a subject for it, right? So like, let's say, you know, what does that song make you think of, right? Maybe it's like a big 3-headed dog or something, right? Whatever. Something that correlates to the song, something that correlates to you, something that correlates to your project, whatever. Think of it. Think of your subject matter. Then you're going to create a composition with that subject matter in the 3D space. So maybe that 3-headed dog is going to be like walking down a street or something like that. Okay.
Right.
Now we're going to get a little bit more technical here. So what you need to do in your composition, especially when you're animating, is you need to find a way to make all of the parts move in tandem with the music, right? So sometimes you have to do a little bit of math going on in there. You have to figure out, like what tempo your music is, what the frame rate of your composition is, and sort of how you can get the keyframes is what they're called, which is like the little indicators that tell certain parts of the scene to move to different parts of the scene. You have to set the keyframes in order to do the proper movement at the right time compared to your frame rate, right? So it's all very, very, very intricate and very, very specific. You also have to get some lights in there, right? Sometimes the lights are flashing at like the same tempo or like a sub tempo of the music, right? So it's very, very thorough of a process. Sometimes you can do it, split up between softwares. Sometimes, if you're being a little bit more forgiving on yourself, which I would definitely recommend, you can, maybe just create your subject and your composition, but not necessarily sync it to the music, and then do the syncing to the music in like a secondary program or even like a live program, which is something called like VJing. So just like I'm like a DJ, right? When I do my shows, I'm mixing my music, which DJing has become a very dated term very quickly. But anyways,
it has.
VJing is kind of the derivative of that, but it's video jockey, not disc jockey. It's video jockey. And the VJs are taking those visuals and essentially getting them to appear as if they are synced up and working in tandem with the music. So, maybe that VJ is by hand manually triggering strobes behind the video scene that make it seem like it's going on beat, right? Maybe they're playing around with the speed of the clip, the way the speed in which it's playing, making it go from slow to fast, stuff like that, so as to make it feel as if it is on beat with the music. You could also, do things like zooming techniques, stuff like that. All this stuff just to make it feel as if it's going together with the music, and that's what the VJ is doing. So, like you said, right? It's like that's becoming an increasingly big part of live music as a whole now, but for sure electronic music, it's been that way for the past decade. It's extremely important. And that's pretty much all to the credit of the VJ. I've sort of predicted for a while now. I actually think I'm going to end up being wrong here, but I still might not. I still have some time. I predicted quite a while ago that the responsibility of the DJ and the VJ will essentially one day merge into one. And there's a couple artists that are sort of reinforcing that idea for me. The main one that I can think of, huge inspirations to me. They're so fucking incredible as people and artists and just visionaries within like the tech of their field is BTS and Black Tiger Sex Machine.
Yep.
Yeah, they do insane stuff with their live show. They have, I couldn't even begin to dissect it. It's that intricate. I think they've gone as far as programming their own software protocols to like get it to work exactly the way that they want to. They're freaking geniuses, man. They're insane. But sort of what they've done is they've started to blur the lines between, just playing the music and playing the visuals. The way that they have all their stuff set up is that, if they're playing, so first of all, they're not just playing their music, they're playing different parts of their music all live in tandem at the same time to create the whole song. So, like the song stems, right? Is essentially what they're playing stacked on top of each other. But what they've done is they've found a way to essentially pair visuals with those individual stems so that certain visuals will play with certain parts of the song. And it makes it so that, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And they're sort of one of the first. Now, there might be others to which I'm discrediting right now. And if that's the case, I severely apologize. But those are the guys that I know of that I've sort of looked up to and referenced that are just doing absolute boundary pushing stuff with their music and their live visuals. It's absolutely incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm bringing them up is because I have sort of had a feeling for a while that at some point in the future, that's the future of the electronic musician, as far as I see. Now, I don't know. I know they don't make their own visuals. I know they execute them. So whether that's still the responsibility of the musician as it would be, that maybe not. But I do feel as if the two sides of the world might converge very, very tightly, and so that these artists are sort of operating their own visual show as well as just playing their music. And I believe that it has the potential to be very, very straightforward, but the technology is very roundabout at the current moment. It's just like not quite there. That's why I'm explaining to you that like their setup is absolutely insane. It's wild. It's very, very intricate. Whereas I don't think it necessarily needs to be in the future, but we're probably at least a decade away from that being the case. There are some software breakthroughs that are coming. I know Pioneer is working on something that would essentially allow like a visual and like the Pioneer CDJs, like which DJs use to play. It would allow a visual to sync to the time signature of the CDJ, which would allow somebody to they queue up a song. They also queue up a visual. Think of how easy that could be, right? So you essentially, whether you made that visual yourself or not, you could hire someone to be like, make me the visual to this song. They make out a visual to the entire song, and then as you're mixing it, you're mixing the song as you are. The LED wall behind you is mixing the visual, right? It's like it has the potential to be very, very, very simple, but right now it's just not. So who knows? We'll see. I could be wrong about that. We'll see how well this ages.
We'll have to review this in about like a decade just to see.
Yeah, literally. We're gonna hop back on in a decade and
like,
reassess.
Were you right? I don't know if you were right, but here's the thing. It's so. In my experience, most of the time I've been on stage, but the good times I've had on just in the audience, just hanging out with everybody. There was a couple moments where I was more sober than others, and I just hung out by like the light booth just to like see what they were doing and to watch who now I'm assuming was the VJ. I can't say for certain, but I would just see them look at their visuals beforehand and then execute. Then I would see that on the stage, and then they would do stuff during that. I guess my question, I'm just trying to get a little bit technical with it, but
yeah,
when it comes to making these visuals, and let's say you create everything that you did for your song, and so that I'm understanding correctly, you don't have to sync them up to your song just yet, right? You don't have to sync them up perfectly. You just have to make sure that it's the right frame rate, and then whoever is handling all the visuals can mess with them live on the spot if they wanted to, or they can leave them as is. Is that, am I understanding correctly?
That's pretty much spot on. Being relatively general. The thing is it can be more intricate than that, or it doesn't have to be. That's kind of like the baseline. That's about as simple as you can make it, right? So if you want to have visuals that are going with your music, the simplest way of doing so is kind of exactly what you just said. It's like you have another body doing the visual work for you, the VJing, and you give them these clips, these animations, and their responsibility is to get it to go with the music, right? A lot more intricate of a process would be beforehand making the visual go with the music, because you got to think, right? It's like, I mean, especially like as an electronic music, as a DJ, I move my set around all the time, right? So if I were to make a 3-minute long animation to a song just to swap it out a week and a half later, you could see how that would either be extremely time consuming or extremely expensive, right?
Yeah. Holy shit. Yeah.
That
when you
goes
put it that
to,
way, holy shit. Yeah.
Yeah. That goes to show you why a lot of the time, the people that have like the best visuals in the game are also the ones that are, making seven figures on a profit when they do their concert, right?
Yeah. How would that work then, to be able to do it for one person to do it all? Because like you were describing with BTSM, and I may be uneducated in this area, but I'm not sure if Deadmau5 kind of does it a little bit. I've seen his video breakdowns on his stage, and I think he has something that controls some lights or something, but I don't know to what extent he controls what you see. But so far, what I have seen and what you've been describing, for the performer to be able to handle the visuals, it's a very, very intricate setup, like we've been saying. I mean, to be able to hook up every single stem to different things, like it's insane. What needs to happen in order for one person to be able to do it seamlessly? And it seems like at some point, the artist may focus more on the visuals and the music, especially if the music's already made or whatever. I don't know, but I guess in your opinion, what needs to be able to happen on your laptop or whatever for you to be able to do it easily, just on your own, just both music and visuals? And we're talking hypothetical here. I don't know.
Sure. Well, it's a great question. And I have at least the answer for me personally, because I've been kind of involved in the tech with it, not super involved. I'm literally nothing even close to an expert, not even close. I'm kind of like an intermediary here. I'm not very good. Anyways, I feel as if I know enough to answer that question, at least what the situation would be for myself. Okay, so being very specific here, to be honest with you, here's how it would work. We would have the CDJs, and exactly like I kind of just said to you, when you load up the song on the CDJ or whatever you're using, some people, mix electronic music with Ableton, so on and so forth. When you cue your song, that is also cueing a visual, okay? When it's cueing that visual can be synced or unsynced, but probably relatively unsynced so as to make it, it's like we have two options here. We either do work on the live end or we do work on the back end, right? It's like the work is either going to be done as the song is being performed live, or the work is going to be done as it's being created. One of those two things needs to be the case. So we got to figure out which one we want to do. For the sake of, being, what's the word I want to use? For the sake of being flexible, for the sake of being flexible, being able to, move pieces around in our performance and so on. I think putting a little bit more stock in doing that work on the live end is probably best. So, you cue up the song and the visual at the same time and you play it, right? So the song and the visual is playing, but it's a pretty cut and dry visual, right?
Right.
So that's what's going on just based off of the CDJ. Now, the way that I would do it is I would essentially make all the VJing effects to be done by the DJ, okay? So the visual's already playing, it's already relatively synced to the music, but then the DJ is also responsible for doing sort of those effects measures that I said before, such as, like speeding it up, slowing it down, zooming effects, strobing effects, stuff like that, to make it feel as if it's going to the music. And that would be done in the live setting. It sounds very straightforward, right? But it's not quite there. There's underlying tech that just hasn't been done, probably because that's just like not the way the industry's functioning right now. And I get that, right? We have VJs. VJs have, they need work. They have jobs. They're just as crucial here. If we were to be doing something like this, it would be doing one of two things. It would either be eliminating VJs entirely or forcing VJs to sort of merge their creativity with DJs, right?
Right.
So they'd have to be both now, which, I get it. That's a lot. The same way that some musicians don't want to do shit with this, right? We can't expect a VJ to want to do shit with that. Who knows? Maybe that is still the way that the industry ends up going. Maybe not. That could be the reason why we don't have it yet. But I still do feel my prediction remains the same, that is how it'll be. But that's the way that I would do it. That's the way that it would work. And it honestly would be relatively simple. Anybody that could keep rhythm, is able to DJ, and anybody that can keep rhythm is also going to, in that circumstance, would also be able to VJ their own stuff, and it would be very, very seamless. So that's a pretty basic model of that technique, but I think it could work. I've worked on it many times in the past, haven't quite gotten it there yet, but it's something that I've been working on for my shows for a while, but I've kind of just like shelved it for the time being because it's like, there's multiple aspects of it, but it's very difficult to prepare in the first place, extremely time consuming. So it's like, kind of what we talked about earlier. It's like sometimes you got to pay good mind to your music, and the amount of time that I was paying to that, I was like, fuck, I haven't made music in like 6 weeks. Like shit, this is not good. So you kind of have to be picky and choosy there. The other thing is just like the amount of labor that it takes when you're on the road to have to like use like, I had a rig that I use in order to be able to pull it off, and it's
all that processing power though. Holy shit!
Oh man, yeah, and it's extremely taxing to have to set up. It's extremely taxing to have to lug around with you. It's extremely difficult, not to mention that the way that it is not streamlined right now makes it extremely susceptible to failure.
Yeah.
So it's just like risking all of these things compared to just like, if I'm pulling up to the venue and there's an in-house VJ, or if I'm playing a festival and I want to hire a VJ, that right now is still the much superior alternative, So relinquish a little bit of creative control there, but maybe one day. We'll see.
Yeah, that's a very interesting prediction, man. Like, I feel it makes sense in my head. I think I mean, when it comes to like DJing or even other facets of the industry, this has happened many times before where positions have been merged, and in certain genres, things still remain fairly separate. I think it just depends on what you want to do. But I honestly, it sounds like your prediction, in my opinion, might be right. That I guess the better question is if the technology does get streamlined, it's only a matter of time before the software just gets better, and it requires less processing power, or maybe just computers just get faster, like with the new MacBooks and stuff like that. It should be possible. I'm curious, man. We're going to start wrapping up soon because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But before I ask you about like some of your latest projects, what are some of the coolest visuals that you feel like you've made that you feel very proud of? And then maybe what's like the worst one that you made?
Sure.
Like polar opposites.
I can think of, some of the ones that I made like at the very beginning, again, I'm still very much like in a learning process with it all. Extensive learning process, like I'm on my third year. So I've learned a decent amount so far to where I feel relatively comfortable showcasing my stuff. But for the most part, because I'm still like learning the way that I am, it's pretty linear. It's like the one that I make this week is better than the one I made last week, and the one I made last week is better than the one from 2 weeks ago, so on and so forth. But I do recall some of the early like ones that I made where I just like did not know anything. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I'm looking back on it now.
Did you actually make that three-headed dog? Did you actually make that three-headed dog?
I did not. No, that's still probably outside of my skill sets. Again, maybe by 2026, we'll see. But there were some that I made, like maybe like a year in, 6 months in, even, that I was like, man, this is it. Like, this is fucking sick. And it's just like, no, it's not. Some of the ones that I'm the most happy with. Let me think. I'll say this: I'm not technically allowed to speak on exactly what it's for yet, but I just made one for a project that I have coming in August, and it's by far the best thing I've ever done, for sure, within like the digital art medium. So I'm very excited for that. That'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, again, it's pretty much just like each one is better than the last one, and it's pretty distinguishable when you go back in time far enough to be like, yeah, these weren't that good. Not that good.
It's the same with music, though. I imagine it's the same thing. You go back to a beat that you started with 6 years ago. You're like,
exactly.
Probably wouldn't do that way ever again. But that's the learning curve. Dude, my man. Christian, you're awesome, dude. Thank you so much for being honest and open and available to talk. This has been one of my favorites, and it's awesome to see someone like you, not only super humble, but super well-grounded and very multifaceted. Like, it makes sense why you've succeeded, why you are where you're at, and why you continue to succeed. And I'm just elated that we got the opportunity to talk. It's been an absolute pleasure, man.
Thank you very much. No, this has been fantastic. You're very, very fun to talk to. This was a really good conversation, and hopefully some people can get some good stuff out of this. That's my one hope. So
we're going to get some VJs out of this. Now, before I let you go, let me know, what do you have on your docket? I know that you have some stuff coming up very soon. I don't know if you have any performances lined up, maybe an album release or something, but let me know. What do you got on your plate?
Sure. I mean, I have a pretty healthy amount of shows coming up for the rest of the year, a lot of which kind of just came in over the past couple of weeks, which I'm very excited for. Aside from that, again, the project that I actually just referred to, I'm not allowed to speak on exactly what it is quite
keep
yet.
It on the DL then.
It's without a doubt the best and biggest thing that I've ever done. And it's in August, so I'll at least say that. And if my manager wants to fight me about it, fuck off. It's fine. So.
We'll just take it off of that. Okay, cool, man.
Well, leave it.
we'll leave it in there then. Dude, I'm so happy for you. You have tons of performances coming up. Really cool secret project that we're not allowed to know about coming later on in the year. I'm super happy for you. I'm very excited to see where your career goes. You need to come back on, man. Maybe sometime in the year. Let's see where you're at.
Absolutely. Let's do it. You let me know anytime, and I'm on it.